Good evening, everyone. Give you a second just to get logged in.
Evening.
Oh, good evening. Hi, how are you?
Good, good. You?
All gravy today, thank you. Although I'm not a massive fan of this weather. Why has it gone so cold all of a sudden?
England,
I've
what do you
got
expect?
4 layers on.
That's because it's November, Becky.
No, that's nonsense. It's not December yet. It's not quite winter yet, is it? So that's nonsense.
Yeah.
Nonsense. So, good evening, everyone. Just have a second while you all get settled. So, this evening we've been inundated with questions from you guys. So we've got a big list of questions to answer. And I'm just telling you all in the chat, ask any questions here or unmute and let us know if you want to get involved. So for anybody that is new to Ask Becky, hello. This is a free weekly Zoom session where you can come and ask questions, listen, be nosy, get involved, and just be part of a community every week. And this week we have a returning special guest by popular demand. We have Mr. Lee Sperry. Hello, Lee. How are you?
I'm starving.
You're starving.
Yeah. As soon as this finishes, I'm going to go pub. I explained to Becky earlier that I didn't have time to eat today, and I made mistakes and just worked straight through, and I'm starving now. So apart from that, I'm good. It's Christmas soon. That's exciting.
Very exciting. Very exciting. I'm usually quite an early Christmas shopper, and I was in B&M today, and I just thought I've got nothing, so we'll get on it at some point. So we're going to crack on because Lee needs to get to the pub because he needs something to eat. So as always, if you guys are okay to mute your microphones for the time being, if anybody wants to unmute and ask anything, just either pop your hand up or pop a message in the chat or get my attention somehow, and we'll get you on. So Lee, last time we were on this, we had a load of questions, which we've got again this evening, and we kind of took it in turns to give our point of view across and our advice. So happy with that again? Amazing. All right, so we're going to crack on straight away then. So the first message that I've got on the list that we got sent, this is by Eva. So if a student stalls once, shall I adapt the lesson straight away or wait for the second one? Also, shall we have a wee exercise like moving off slowly a few meters, stop and do it again a few times? What if there's nowhere to stop and we must drive a few minutes to that spot and they stall again? Go.
Are you not going first, or am I going first? I'll go first. Fine.
You go first on this one.
You just told me not to take over your show, so I assumed that meant that you were going to cue me in. Right. Okay. I mean, if a student stalls once, then have you got a skill deficiency on your hands, or have they just stalled the car, like you do, like I do, like Becky does, like everyone does, because we make mistakes because we're human beings. So you need to sort of think of it like that. You know, is your learner controlling the car in a deficient way that's going to create stall after stall and heighten risk? Like, are they continuously lifting the clutch up without the gas on? Is that the way they do it? That's not right. That's gonna create stalling. Are they routinely bringing it up too quick? Are they bringing it up with the brake on or the foot brake on? So are we looking at a skill deficiency, or are we looking at a one-off thing? So what I'd suggest is that if it did happen a second time, then it's not a one-off because the clue's in the name. One-offs happen once. It's not a two-off. So it would be something I would not overlook if it happened again, because I've seen a pattern. So park up, have a chat about it, discuss why they think it's happening, what sort of risk they think it could bring, and then fix it, because you've got to fix stuff. And like has been suggested there, a little exercise away from the pressures of doing it at a traffic light or at a junction would be a good idea. On the other point, know where to stop, and I hear that quite a lot. That's in your lesson planning. Always ensure that you've got these little escape routes built into your lesson plan. So if you need to, then you can stop there. So all in the planning.
Yeah, absolutely. I would agree with everything that you've just said there. And also, you know, there is nothing wrong with if you can't find somewhere to stop straight away, if you've got to drive a few minutes to get to somewhere and you know that that mistake is going to happen again, there is nothing wrong with saying, okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to help you out a little bit with this just so it gets right. Let's get somewhere safe. Let's work together to make sure that that's not happening again. And then once we're there, we've then got the time and the space to have a play and give you the freedom to explore this a little bit more. Amazing. So we've got another one from Eva as well. If a student makes a mistake where I have to verbally or physically intervene, e.g. position at a roundabout, shall I fully guide them on the position at the next one or two before we can safely stop to have a wee chat? I love how you've put wee chat in that. Analyze and agree level of support for the next chunk. So if a student makes a mistake where I have to verbally or physically intervene, shall I fully guide them on the next one or two before we can safely stop? I guess this depends on how much you've had to verbally or physically intervene. If it's similar to kind of what Lee just said, if it's something that's happened as a one-off, you've had to verbally intervene, you've got time to maybe quickly clarify their knowledge, understanding, and your learner is happy to show you on the next one that they've got it, then potentially not. Potentially you don't need to go back to fully guided. If it's something that you think, okay, I'm not going to let them do that again because of X, Y, and Z, it was safety critical, then yeah, absolutely. There's nothing wrong with saying, I'm going to help you on this next one. Let's get this one right. And then we've got somewhere safe that we can then pull up and chat about this further. It does depend, and you hear this a lot, it depends on the situation at that moment, at that time, on what it is that you've had to verbally and physically intervene. So your example, Eva, was position at a roundabout. I guess you would ideally be proactive enough so that they're not going to be getting in the wrong position to a point where it's safety critical and you're needing to intervene in a drastic manner. If you're doing things like position at roundabouts, you want to make sure that you've had that chat before about it to make sure that it kind of goes well and you're setting a specific structure on your specific goal to know what it is that you're going off to do so that it goes well, because we always want it to go well for our learners. We want them to feel good about it rather than it going wrong and us having to intervene and then talk. But obviously if you do have to, there is nothing wrong with saying, I'm going to just help you a little bit more. Let's get this right together and then we can stop and chat.
It's my turn
Lee?
again, isn't it?
Sure.
I was just thinking then, I love your Zoom voice, Becky. It's great. It's so posh. You're like my mum. Like my mum is from Blackburn. She's salt of the earth. She's got a very typical Blackburn accent. But if you ring her up, she's like, "Hello, Sperry residents." So that reminds me of that. Anyway, so yeah, I mean,
very much for that. Thank you. Yeah.
you're welcome. So I think it's a good idea. I mean, protect and manage the risk first at all costs, is what I'd say. So if you thought it was going to happen again, then I would suggest to the learner, would you like me to help you with that until we can find somewhere to stop? Or if it was really serious, I wouldn't give them the option. I would say, I'm going to help you with that. Because you've got to manage the risk and you know, being client-centered is one thing, but you've got to manage the risk, you know, before anything else. So if you think that there is a risk of something quite severe happening again, then suggest to your learner that, you know, do you want me to help you out with that? But protect and manage the risk first. And then once we have got to a safe place, we can learn second. So manage the risk first, learn second. And once we've got them at the side of the road, then we can self-reflect and then we can put a little plan together and practice it and fix it. And then you've got that balance between theory and practice that the DVSA always say that they want, which is learning is happening over there, and then we can go and practice over there, and then we've got that balance right. But protect the risk at all costs first.
Amazing. Eva said thank you in the chat, so fabulous. Okay, next question was from Lisa. So my question is, how can I get my questioning technique right and stay in my brain? I'm doing so much reading of books and stuff on socials, listening to podcasts, watching videos, YouTube. I struggle to remember how to ask the right questions when on my lessons. Sometimes I feel I get it right, but other times I feel more disappointed I didn't ask better or deeper questions. I'm trying so hard, but not sure I'm getting anywhere.
It sounds like she might be trying too hard there. I think, if you get a lot of information from a lot of sources and you've got a lot of things swimming around in your head, it never makes it easy to do it. So I think, my strategy would always be to sort of, this is a mindset. This questioning thing is a mindset. So you need to be naturally inquisitive. You need to find out, you should be wanting to know, what is the learner thinking? Why did they do what they did? What thoughts led to that decision that they made? And if you're naturally wanting to know the answers to these questions, then you'll always ask these questions because you want to know, you're being inquisitive. And that's the key thing with coaching, is you're trying to coach the learning out of people, not kind of, you're trying to output, you're trying to get output from the learner rather than input and teach them and tell them everything that you think. So if you're coaching them right, you're looking for the output. So you'll ask questions to find out their thoughts and find out their opinions. And when you have that mindset, your questions will come naturally anyway, or it certainly did to me, because I did this job for 10 years without doing any coaching. So I think that's the key thing, is you've got to have that mindset. It's like a switch, instead of telling, you've got to ask. And then when you do that, you instantly get a learner who is actively involved, because when you tell them, then they can just listen. But when you ask them, they have to speak back, and then you've got that two-way conversation going. But, ask questions that you don't know. And before you ask questions, think about what you're trying to find out. I think that's a good tip as well. So, what are their thoughts on what, like I said, why it happened, what the risk could be, how would they feel if that risk was to happen, how they think they could fix stuff, what the outcome is that they want to get from doing it again, and what are their thoughts on how you could help them do that. But work with them and ask questions that you don't know, because you really want to know, or you should want to know.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you there. I remember when I was a PDI, one of the things I struggled with the most was thinking, I'm meant to ask a question here. Right, what question am I meant to ask? Let me think. And then by the time I'd thought that, the learner's now at the next thing. And that moment has passed. Whatever it was that I thought I had to ask is gone now. And we're now in a safety critical situation, and I'm on the back foot, and I was always chasing my learner. And I realized that the reason why, and it took a lot of training and a lot of being curious with myself and with the job, and with when qualifying as well, it took a lot of curiosity from me to find out why I struggled with it so much. And the reason why I struggled with it is because I was asking questions because I thought I had to ask a question to impress an examiner to pass a test. And actually, you have to ask a question because you really give a damn about your learner and about who they are, how they're feeling, what they're doing, why they're doing it. Have they got a way of knowing why they're doing things and what they're doing? And I think from my experience with helping people with their part 2, I get a lot of people come to me with part 2. And some of the training that I think that they've had, and again, this was me, I was in this position. For my part 2, I was told what to do and how to do it. And the why was missed out. So why are you doing that at that point, Becky? Why are you signaling there? Why are you choosing that lane? Why are you picking that as a safe place? And because I missed that, when I then got to part 3 and a learner was then maybe making a mistake or something was going wrong, I struggled with getting to the why and getting to the deep nitty-gritty, because I hadn't got to that. I was just told, well, this is what you do, this is how you do it, this is the way of how you do it. And then when I started to dig a little deeper about it all, I realized that you just have to be so bloody curious with your learner. You have to care that they have to get to the solutions themselves, just like Lee said, it's got to come from them. So when you're asking questions, you don't want to ask, why did you do that? What are the consequences? What are you going to do differently? They're great questions, and you can base your conversation around a template of things like that. But if you ask your learner, why did you do that? And they say, well, I did that because my best mate's dad got killed on this roundabout once, and that's why I was scared. You can't then just think, okay, well, my next question needs to be, what are the consequences? You have to follow your learner. So whatever response they give you to a question, listen to them, pick out the information that they've given you in their response, and chuck it back at them in a question. And anyone here that's been on my question and techniques workshop will know that I'm a massive fan of using questions to help build that trust and rapport. So when you ask a learner, tell me your thoughts on that, and they say, yeah, it was good, just chuck good back at them. So tell me what specifically was good. Or if they say, oh, that was crap, tell me what you did that made it crap. Just take the key information they give you and chuck it back at them. But the only way you're going to feel okay with questions is if you know why you're asking them, and get into that nitty gritty. I hope that helps, Lisa. I think you're on. There's a couple of Lisas on. Okay, next question. A minute ago, I disappeared under my desk because I completely dropped my phone and lost my place, but we're good, we're back. Let's have a look. Next question. This is from Nick. In a situation where a pupil has a better view than me, such as moving around a bus or crossing traffic, turning right at traffic lights, how much trust should you put in the pupil? For example, there's a traffic light junction in my area where the driver has a good view of oncoming traffic, but I have virtually zero view. So for me, I think is it my turn? I think it's my turn.
It is.
So for me, Nick, and for everyone here, we haven't got X-ray eyes. We're meant to be able to see more than our learners, but if there's physically something in the way, there's nothing you can do about that. What you can do is manage the risk as best as you can. So ensure that your learner is controlling the car safely, creeping slowly. Potentially, if you're feeling like your learner could do something sudden, cover your feet, hovering near your brake pedal if you need it. And as you're creeping, you're watching your learner to check that they're leaning, encourage them to lean, or ask them, how could you improve your view here? I think a lot of people say don't ever really fully trust a learner, but if there is something physically blocking your view, what's the option if it's your partner driving? You're just going to creep, aren't you, until you can see better? Yeah, we haven't got X-ray eyes. You're just going to have to creep, ask them some questions, get them to be giving you the knowledge. And I guess this would come down a little bit to your sort of practice area skills that you've got. If you know that area as well that you're taking them, you know whether it's generally a busy area and you think that there's going to be a lot of stuff, you can use that local knowledge that you've got to help you. Potentially as well, don't take someone there that you think could just suddenly floor it and just ram in front of them. Well,
Alison's just put a question in the chat as well that kind of relates to the last question. So can I answer that one first?
you certainly can. I've completely lost my place. It's dead out. Somebody called me, I think Mark is on here. Mark called me the Rylan of the driving instructor industry for doing all these talk shows. It's really hard to talk and keep an eye on that. So if I miss any, feel free to somebody tell me.
Is that a yes? Can I answer the question?
Yes.
Right,
Yes.
okay, great. It feels Alison's question is kind of, it comes from a place of, I'm worrying about the test, and I'm worrying about what the examiner thinks, and I'm worrying about what do I need to say? What do they need to hear me say? But what we're talking about today is what you should do every single day, and the exam is no different. And if anyone tells you that the exam is different to a normal lesson, then that's come from the mouth of someone that does it wrong every day. So don't listen to that advice because it's not right. But yeah, I mean, there's kind of two things I suppose we're talking about there. When you're making your lesson plan before you go for your exam, then you need to make your lesson plan, which involves asking questions to make sure the learner knows and understands what they need to know and understand about the thing that you're planning to do. So that would be done before you meet the examiner, and hopefully that answers your question. You would be asking questions to you know, make sure the learner knows what they're doing before we go and do it, because if it's not right in their head, it's not going to be right on the road anyway. In terms of in front of the examiner, then, you know, at the start of the exam, that's just a quick summary of what you're doing currently and what the plan is, and, you know, what the goals are, and so on and so on. But we were kind of more talking about during a lesson, in the example of, you know, when something's gone wrong, if a mistakes have happened, and then those kind of questions to dig down into how the learner feels, and why they think it's happening and what they think, you know, they could do about it. So yeah, hopefully that answers that question. On this question, the first thing I thought when you said that was that if this does happen, you're in a helpless position, because you've got two options. One is to wait for the bus to go. That's the safest one, isn't it? But the risk then is that you've got people behind you who can see there's nothing coming, so they'll overtake you and the bus, and then you're stuck. The other option, like Becky said, is to, you know, edge out very, very, very carefully, and kind of put that trust in your learner, but also be ready, be ready to react with your pedals as well. But I think trying to look at it from like how an examiner would look at that, it's probably the same way I'd think about it. My thought process would be, why are we in that position in the first place? You know, what we do if we're in it is one thing, but why are we in it is another. So, you know, if you're planning ahead and you're anticipating as the instructor, then you've got a bus in front of you driving down the street. So what do buses do? Well, they pull up. So what am I going to do if that bus pulls in? You know, what might my learner do? My learner might stop too close to the bus, and then neither of us can see. So am I going to let that happen? No, I'm not. So if the bus does pull in, I'd be asking the learner, you know, where are you planning to stop, or what's your plan for the bus? And if they don't stop in a position that I can still see around the bus, then I will intervene and stop there. And then we're not in that situation at all. And I'll explain to the learner why as well, because I can't see, you know, so I would intervene and stop that, because I'm not putting myself in that helpless position. Because prevention is always better than the cure, because you've got to manage the risk, and you can't manage the risk when you can't see.
Yeah, absolutely. Nick, you've unmuted. That was your question.
Yeah,
Do you want to
thank
respond?
yeah, thank you. Yeah, the traffic light junction is kind of what I was thinking, what you said, Becky. Yeah. It's awful, and it's a 40-mile-an-hour junction as well. I mean, obviously you slow down for the traffic light, but yeah, it's one where you're at, you know, your typical boy racer just fly through. They don't. So that's why it's always a bit of worry for me. But yeah, with the bus stop thing, with what Lee said, I do get them to, you know, proactively say what this bus will do. And I tell them I always hang back a little bit further with the bus, and maybe a little bit further out to the right, so you've got a really good view behind it, because it's so big. The reason I asked that question was, again, on about our test area, practice areas, there's a really badly placed bus stop. It's right next, just after a pedestrian crossing on a left blind bend. No idea why they put the bus stop there. It's awful. Every instructor comments on it, said, I don't know why the bus stop's there. The thing is, I can't see around there. And it's one of those where there's nothing you can do about it. It's just literally the learner's decision, because you just cannot see around it. So much so I think examiners sometimes get involved to actually help them, because you just can't see around it. So that's why it was something that potentially bothers me if it ended up on a part 3 route for whatever reason. That's why it's just one of those where, and I think might answer it myself really, take someone that's going to have a bit of, you know, nous and a bit of experience with it, rather than obviously someone that's maybe an intermediate, for instance.
Go on, Lee, you respond. I'm just replying to
No, I think that's exactly it. I mean, there are some places where we've got that, you know, there will be some places like that, and there's nothing you can do. So apart from avoiding them altogether on your exam, then you've just got to do the safest thing. It's kind of like, you know, when if you were on a driving test, if your learner was on a driving test, and the learner was in a situation and they weren't quite sure what to do, and if they say to the examiner, you know, what should I do? The examiner will always say, do the thing that you think is best. You know, and that thing should always be the safest option. So if we've got two crappy options and your learner chooses the safest one of those options, then they've done it right, haven't they? Because what else can you do? So what you were saying there is spot on, I think.
Thank you. Cheers. Yeah.
Brill. So we're halfway through, so we're going to have a little shameless plug moment. Lee, tell everyone where they can find you.
Well, it depends how you're inclined. If you're an ADI, you can find me at adidoctor.co.uk. If you're a PDI, pdidoctor.co.uk. My courses are available in 3 ways. We can do a one-to-one Zoom session. We can do a monthly small group workshop, very similar to this, which I run monthly, and also we can do video training where I can send you a video of the course for instant access and instant training. So yeah, pdidoctor.co.uk, adidoctor.co.uk.
Fabulous. And similar services, I guess, empathetic instructor training, or find me on Facebook. One-to-ones, workshops are all on the link that I've put in the group chat, replying to somebody. You can find them there. And it's also important for me to mention at this point to you all as well that next week we have yet another special guest for Ask Becky, and I am delighted that she's with us this evening. We've got Diane Hall joining us next week for Ask Becky. I can see lots of people saying wow. And Diane, I know, would be eager to talk about the questioning techniques. Diane, do you want to unmute and just tell us a little bit quickly about what we're going to chat about?
Hold on. You can hear me. Yeah, as long as you don't mind, Lee, I'll be very, very quick, which isn't normal. Yeah, I just heard when Becky said, oh, when you say to somebody, why did you do it? And if you get the blank look and they turn around and say, I've no idea why, they're not being thick and stupid. Well, some might, but they're actually probably experienced brain fog, the effects of cortisol, the shutdown. They can't think, they can't see, they can't hear, they can't process. They'll pull out in front of the truck, they didn't see it. They don't see the pedestrian at the crossing. So next week, we're going to explore when you do that, say that word, why did you do something? And they've not got any idea. So I'll shut up now. Becky, Lee, this is a fantastic session. I'm thoroughly enjoying it. So handing back to you guys. See you all next week.
I would thoroughly
thank
recommend.
you.
Sorry, Becky. I would thoroughly recommend everyone to watch Diane's appearance next week because she's amazing, and I love you, Diane.
Love you lots. Amazing. Right, let's crack on.
I'll send you the money later for saying that, Lee. Thank you.
Okay, next question. I think it's your turn to answer first. So next question is from Nick. I think Nick is in tonight. For the part 3 in the standards check, is 4 times 2, so 2 points in each, really the bare minimum in the lesson planning section to ensure a pass, same as minimum of 8 for risk management?
Okay, this is me. I'm going first, Diana. I'd say it likely, yes, you do need 8. But remember, it's not a section that's based on your lesson plan. So please don't think that section is about your lesson plan that you've turned up with. It's based on how closely the lesson has stayed in line with the ever-changing needs of the learner throughout the whole lesson. So it's not something you can get right or wrong when you turn up to the test centre. So please don't think of it as just the plan that you turn up with. Was the lesson plan adapted when appropriate? The 4th competency in there does need to be a 2 or a 3 if you're going to pass the exam. So let's say you get a 1 in there. You're also going to get a 1 for did the trainer identify the needs and goals. You're also going to get a 1 in the second one, which is was the agreed lesson structure appropriate? So if you got a 1 for was the lesson plan adapted, you've then got 3 marks in 3 boxes. So the maximum score you'd score is 5 and you ain't going to pass with that. So if you got a 2 for was the lesson plan adapted when appropriate, then you're going to get a minimum of 6 from 3 boxes and then probably another 2, which would be 8 because of how holistically it's marked. So they're not going to give you a 1 if you've got 2s in the other ones. So the short answer is yes.
That was a short answer. Nick's putting his thumbs up. Yeah, I just echo what Lee said. You know, it's funny, again, I'll flash back to when I was a PDI and I looked at all these competencies as individual elements. and actually they just link that they are so intrinsically linked, that, you know, the 4 that you've got in your lesson planning, of course they're important, but a lot of people think lesson planning is just the thing that starts at the beginning, but it happens all the way through, and they all link so much. So there's some in the risk management box that if you're not doing them, you're not going to be able to identify learning goals and needs, which means you're not going to be able to adapt, just like Lee said, which means you're not going to be using the correct teaching and learning strategies that's appropriate for your learner at that moment, at that time. And it just has this massive waterfall knock-on effect. So yeah, I agree with Lee. That's the minimum. If you're getting anything less than that, it's going to fall down into those other categories really heavily. Next question. This is from Nick as well. Do you recommend a certain type of pupil for Part 3 or standards check? Type of pupil, Nick? What do you mean by type of pupil? I love watching people try and unmute. Go down. Press the button down. It's like that. Hang on, I can invite you to unmute. There you go. See if that'll just click on that. There you go.
Hello there.
Hi.
Yeah, hi Becky, hi Lee. Whenever I've been for a standards check in the past, I tend to look for a type of pupil. The type of pupil I look for is that somebody that is communicative is the main thing. Fairly chilled out, partly trained, able to answer questions, so communicative, able to answer questions on the move and when we pull up. And is that the best approach?
I think is it,
Oh,
is it
one,
Matt?
sorry, one that's available. Actually,
One that's available.
one that's reliable and available is really important.
Yeah, absolutely. I think sometimes it could be good to have a couple of backups as well, just in case.
Yeah.
So I think you're looking for some really good elements in your pupil. You're looking for someone that you maybe have a good rapport with. You've got that relationship in the car that you can have chats with, and potentially you like teaching at a certain, where your learners at a certain level that they can potentially talk on the move. I think it's important to remember though that you could take a pupil who you think, well, this is my best pupil and she can talk on the move and she's really good at answering stuff and she's amazing. But then you get them to that test center and they're a month away from test and they think, oh shit, I'm going to be back here in a month for my test. And all of a sudden they just go mute, and your best pupil suddenly becomes your pupil that just does not want to talk for 45 minutes. So whoever you take, you can absolutely take the learner that you think is going to be that kind, but be prepared that they might not be who you think they are. And that's totally okay, as long as we're curious enough about our learner and we care enough about our learner, that in that moment at that time, we are adapting to their needs right there and then. I remember hearing from ADI now that on their Part 3, they took who they thought was their best learner. My learners got their test in a month. They talk all the time. They can talk on the move. They're really, really good. I know I'm going to boss it. It's going to be amazing. And their learner just absolutely went to pot. And they ended up doing quite a basic car control lesson. They had to revert back a lot more steps than what she thought she might. And she did, and she sorted it because that was what her learner needed in that moment at that time. But she said, wow, I was not ready for that. I didn't expect them to be like that. So just be prepared, whoever you take.
I actually had exactly the same experience. So the ideal learner immediately came out of the test centre and started doing things that she would never normally do. And suddenly I was firefighting. But fortunately I fell back. My natural skills were enough for me to firefight, and it just meant rather than talking and sorting things out on the move, we pulled over, had a chat, we went back a few levels and got sorted, and then got back to, because back in this was the last standards check was 5 years ago, so I had a scripted lesson plan at the time, but I wouldn't have one now. I would just have needs on the day.
Well, that's it. I think no matter which learner you take, they will have a need, won't they? So, yeah. Lee, go on. I've waffled enough.
So I was just replying to Mark in the chat. I think you've kind of answered your own question there, really.
Yeah.
So I think, you know, someone that's not going to let you down on the day. So that's what you said, as in not turn up. I think most importantly, like Becky said, someone that you can have a conversation with, and someone who you can show off your coaching skills with. You'll struggle to do that if they're a grunter or a sugar or a I don't know her. Take someone that's not a beginner, because they've got to be partly trained. And someone who obviously doesn't need to be taught something from scratch, because that's not allowed. So I'd always say kind of a middle of the road kind of learner, but someone that you've got a good rapport with, someone that you get on with, someone that answers questions. And I'd also say, and this is from personal experience, not to take a loved one, because your learner will, and Diane will talk about this kind of next week, but you know, your performance is your potential minus distraction. And when you take a learner to the test, they're already under pressure because you've taken them to a test center which they don't like. The nemesis of all learner drivers has just got in the car with you, and they don't like that. And these things are going to unsettle them and put them on edge, which can then affect their performance. The other thing is that no matter how much you convince them otherwise, they will always think they can ruin your big day, no matter how much you tell them they can't. If it looks like a test, smells like a test, and feels like a test, it's a test. So, like Diane was talking about, those kind of chemicals, the cortisol, the adrenaline, they're going to be running wild. If you take a loved one who knows how much it means to you to pass this exam, if you take a loved one who knows how much you want to pass and, you know, wants to do well for you, that's only going to really ramp up that pressure. So it's never a good idea. If you take someone that doesn't know you, they want you to do well, but they don't really care. Not really, not in the spirit of things. If you take a loved one, they're feeling exactly the same pressure as you, and there's two of you there, full of the pressure. So never a good idea.
Okay, fair enough. Cheers, guys.
Thanks, Nick. Next question. We've got two questions from Jude. She said, not sure if they're both related to planning and anticipation. How can I get pupils to recognize they go too fast in narrow spaces? What if the car door opens? What if a pedestrian steps out? How would it make you feel if you hit a bike? These things just don't work. Anything else, please? I think it's you first.
Oh, I'm still replying to Mark. I will get to you, Mark. I've written your answer in three blocks now. Yeah, I mean, you know, think about the what ifs with that, you know. So I think sometimes we can kind of do too much work for them. If we're sort of telling them about doors opening, if we're telling them about pedestrians stepping out, how would you make it feel? It's kind of doing the job for them. So, you know, ask them to think about the risks of driving too close to cars and what could happen next, and how could they alleviate that risk in case the door did open, and you know, what would be the outcome they would get from trying that different thing. You know, what would be being slower givers? You know, what would be the outcome we'd have? Would we have more time to react if someone opened the door? And have that conversation at the side of the road, like we said earlier. Make learning take place there, and then set up a plan to work on it. If we don't set up a plan, if we just talk about it and then that's it's not going to be a surprise if it continues. So we need to make sure we have a solid plan in place to help them overcome that problem. So for example, if they wanted prompts, if they were happy for you to prompt them, you need to be thinking about what are the goals that we're trying to achieve by working on this, and those prompts should come from those goals. So you could ask them, you know, what speed this fits this level of hazard, or what could be about to happen, to get them thinking about, you know, and anticipating, and ask them what their plan is in case the door does open, and how does this feel to you now? How does this speed feel to you now? And just kind of coach them through it. But I think we need to get them to think for themselves what the consequences are, because if we tell them what the consequences are, it's kind of your thoughts and your opinions, rather than getting them to really think carefully about what could happen and how we could best alleviate the risk.
Yeah, absolutely. It's got to be Lee touched on it earlier. We've got to get the learning out of the learner. There's no point in us just saying you need to do this, you need to do that, X, Y, Z, because, you know, they might retain that information for a period of time, maybe even up to their test. And then eventually when you're not sat there, they'll go, oh, do you know what? I don't need to do that anymore because I've not got Lee sat next to me nagging me. So we need to get them to come up with the solutions. I know you mentioned, Jude, in your question, you said these things aren't working. You said that, you know, you're trying the what if questions and they're not working. If they're not working, you then have to up your level of help in some way and potentially change what you're offering them to help them learn it. So if you're maybe in an area, you're in this, you know, same regular area and it's not working, maybe take them to a different area where you could stop them next to a parked car, the position that they're currently in, and help them see it rather than just say, what if a car door opened? Stop them next to a car when you know that there's nobody around, there's nobody behind, and say, can I open my door now? What if they open their door now? Sometimes, and learning absolutely takes place at the side of the road. Sometimes saying it at the side of the road, saying, what if a car door opens now? If there isn't a car next to you, it can be hard for some learners to visualize that. So as long as it's safe, maybe take them on a cul-de-sac and get them to turn around and stop next to a car. Stick a car next to you and say, well, what if that door opened now? What would we do? Now imagine if we were traveling at 30 miles an hour. Imagine if it was a kid opening that door. Sometimes they need that kind of, oh, I get it now. They need that light bulb moment to get them to realize actually what is the risk here. And if you're finding that those what if questions aren't working, we just need to find what will work. And it could be the case that you say to your learner, this is the desired outcome that we're looking for. What's going to work for you to help us get this right? See if that helps.
Can I say one thing with meeting situations, which I think helps a lot?
Beck. For anyone that doesn't know, Beck has been here since day one on Ask Becky. She is a loyal regular.
I always say the risk and reward thing, like benefit. Is it going to be worth it if somebody does open a door and smashes your car in? You're going to wish like you chose safer option just to hold back and then take a safe gap or a wider gap, or do you know what I mean? I just think the risk and reward thing like definitely helps a lot.
Yeah, brilliant. If it's worth talking about, if it's worth getting that point across to your learner, again, it's that light bulb moment, isn't it? Getting them to have that realization. If that's a strategy that works for a learner, then yeah, brilliant. Absolutely. Next question was from Jude as well. So pupils move out too late around parked cars and move in too quickly. I've done explanations and guiding them verbally, but unless I intervene physically, they still do this. Okay, so you've done the explanations and you've guided them verbally, but you've got to intervene physically. I mean, that's a good thing, right? As you're not hitting cars if you're intervening physically. I think a lot of people think that intervening physically must be the last resort, and it can be, but don't forget that if you've got to do that in the moment to get it to go safe, there's nothing wrong with that. However, if it's happening over and over again, then yes, of course, we need to find a different strategy to help this learner not get that close to cars. You've mentioned that you've done explanations. I should imagine, based off your other question, Jude, and from what I know of you, you will have had those kind of conversations to get them to realize stuff. It might be that you need to up your level of help and you need to be telling them at what point they need to start steering out and at what point they come back in, so that you're fully talking them through it so that it goes well. And then when it does go well, say to them, did that go well? What did we do specifically that made it go well? On this next one, do you want to give it a go yourself to see if you can get it to go well? Something like that. There's loads of different ways that we can offer to our learners to help them get that kind of, oh, moment, whether that is upping your level of help, changing the area. Let's get the whiteboard out. Let's get the little toy cars out. What about we go and watch some other cars and see what they do? There's loads of different ways that you can help your learner get that moment where they go, right, I get it. And I've brought into that and that's what I'm going to do from now on.
Yeah, I'd agree with a lot of that. I mean, the thing that from the question that sounds missing is the coaching of it. It sounds like explaining it, which is telling, and then instructing them, like guiding them, is telling them as well. So I think what's missing there, and I think this is why full instruction isn't a good thing and kind of should be retired really, unless we need it. If the learner has the knowledge, understanding, and skills to do the thing, then they shouldn't need talking through it, because when they're being talked through it, it might look like it works, but effectively you're being a puppet master and you're pulling the strings to make it work. It's not really working. It's you doing it, you making the decisions. So probably something in between that and when they try it on their own would be, asking questions to get them to think, so asking them what they can see ahead, or what, maybe more of a leading question, like what can you see parked on the left? So they've gone, oh, okay, there's parked cars. So what's your strategy for that? When are you planning to move out? How much room will we need? What speed will fit this? And getting them to think as they're doing it, because that's when they're actually learning. They're figuring out how to do it with your support. When they're being told what to do, they're effectively you're pulling the strings, and it looks like it works, but it's not really working. So to go from that to independent they would probably struggle. The other thing with independent as well is try to use commentary in your independence. For me, I always think that silent independent is going to lead to reactive risk management, because there's little decisions being made in their mind that you don't know what they are. So when they do something, it's always suddenly. So if you agree to them for them to try it on their own, but you say, I want you to tell me what you can see down the road. I want you to tell me what decisions you're making and how you're going to manage the risk. So it gives them that thing to focus on. And what I often find with silent independent is that it might work for the first few minutes, but then they'll start thinking about what they're having for the dinner, and they'll start thinking about other things on the road, and that focus will be lost. But if you charge them with speaking out loud and telling you what they can see, what they're planning to do, what speed fits, how we're going to manage risk, then it keeps it right at the forefront of their mind, and it's a lot more consistent from the beginning.
Brill. Jude said thank you in the chat for that, which is brill. I've completely lost my place in the chat. Okay, Mohammed said, what could we teach to a pupil who is test ready in the Part 3 test? I think it's your turn first.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes we look at that and we think, right, well, they're ready for the test. But something that Chris Benstead always calls the test is the minimum standards test. And that's what the driving test is. So they might be ready for the test, but are they as good as you? No, they're not. So what have you got in the bag that they don't have in the bag? So maybe you could work on that. And also have a conversation with, what are they going to use that car for when they've got the license? Could we set up a lesson where they drive from their house to work, or from work back to their house with no directional instructions at all? What about to the shops? What about a multi-story car park? What about to the football and back? What about to a McDonald's drive-through and navigating those horrible little drive-through lanes? What are they going to use that car for? And that's what we do. That's what we could spend that time on. Look beyond the test and have that conversation with them and find out what are they going to use that car for? And let's go and practice that in my dual control car, so you'll feel confident for when you're doing it for real in your own car.
Yeah, absolutely back up everything Lee said. Remember, we want to teach our learners to our Part 2 standard. So it isn't just about the minimum amount to get them through. And Diane and I will talk next week about how nerves play a massive part. So if you think your learner's got to test standard practically, we can then also work on the mental side of it and making sure they're ready for the nerves side of the test. And preparing them for that. So what about we go and pick your mates up? Let's have them in the back. How do you feel that you've now got passengers? Let's get another instructor to come and sit in the back of the car as well. And imagine that it's the examiner, and talking to them about the fact that the examiner might have another examiner in the car as well. The test centre manager might join you, and how would the learner feel? And just like Lee said, different scenarios, like I've broke my leg, get me to hospital. How are you going to do that? Over to you, show me. You're going to drive to college one day, come on, let's do that. Or we've got to make a delivery, or we've got to do something, but we've got a time limit, so I'm going to set the time limit. Let's see how we can safely make progress and do that. There's so many things you can do that you and I do all the time. People here that do the school runs, if you've got learners that are coming up to their test and they've got kids, let's imagine we're doing the school run and it's rush hour. How are you going to safely get your kids to school and then get to work on time? And there's loads of things you can do. Just before we move on to the next question, Nick, do you want to unmute and do you want to go for it? You want to ask Lee something about silent independent driving?
Yeah, sorry.
I'm in the middle of typing the answer to that, but I'll now do that. And yeah, go on, ask the question to the group, and then I'll answer it to the group as well.
Yeah, so I've got my part 3 coming up, my final attempt next month. One of my 2 pupils that I'm going to be using, there's a good chance that we're going to be working on something like awareness and planning or defensive driving, which will obviously potentially involve commentary driving from her. Now, what would you say if I'm asking her to do commentary driving and she just isn't doing it? Like I said, right, okay, over to you, tell me what you think. And she just completely just shuts up shop. And even all right, come on, remember, you're going to tell me. And she's still blanking. What would you do at that point?
I mean, the easy answer is don't take someone that's going to not do that if that's what you plan to do. That's the easy answer. I mean, when I was actually typing out, because I thought you were asking me, what did I mean about silent independent driving? So I'll kind of explain what I was saying there. Is that, if a lot of people will think, well, if the learner is going to try it on their own now, if they're going to do it independently, then my role is to just shut up and give directions, become an examiner sort of thing. But when you do that, your learner's going to be making decisions that you won't know what those decisions are until they action them. So your risk management will only ever be reactive rather than proactive. So there's no harm in asking questions as long as you're not helping. So for example, if we're coming up to a meeting traffic scenario with parked cars on both sides and a car coming through the gap, a lot of people wouldn't say anything there because they're thinking, well, it's independent. So if I speak, I'm helping, so I'll stay quiet. But if you ask your learner, what's the plan for the white car coming through the gap, or have we got enough room to fit through the gap, or are you planning to stop or go? None of those questions are actually providing assistance, so therefore it's not over instruction. What those questions are doing is helping you manage risk proactively by finding out what's going to happen before it happens, so you can nip it in the bud if it's wrong. But in that same scenario, if the learner was doing it independently and you said to them, where are you planning to stop? Then you're helping, because that question heavily suggests that what you want them to do is to stop. So that would be seen as over instruction because you're heavily suggesting that's what you want them to do. But if you keep your questions neutral, are you planning to stop or go? What's the plan for this? You're encouraging them to actually start commentary. And if you do that from the start of a learner's career as a learner, it won't take long before you don't have to ask the questions, because it'll be normal for them just to speak and tell you what they're going to do. So on your other point, you kind of answered your own question. So if I was going to do an independent phase of practice with a learner and we agreed, let's say for meeting traffic, that they were going to tell me when they can first see the parked cars, what they're planning to do, whether they're planning to move out or stop, then that would be charged to them. So they need to do that. If we then go into it and they're not doing that, I would just say exactly what you said. So I'd say, come on, talk to me. What are you going to do? And just to kind of give them a little bump, just to kind of get them talking again.
Yeah, that normally does work. It's just, I'm just worried about the examiner being there and it's just completely throw them, because the woman I'm taking, she's really good. She's really talkative. That's why I'm one reason taking her. It's just like what someone mentioned earlier about you can just take the perfect person and just completely fall apart. That's my own sort of worry.
She's a full license holder.
No, she's a learner, but she's a really quick learner. She's really taking everything on really quickly. So that's why I'm sort of thinking about awareness and planning, because it's still about 3.5 weeks away. So
yeah, I mean, just remember with that though, that awareness and planning is a good thing, because likely is that learners tend to look down the bonnet. They're not looking far enough ahead. The goals that you could use there are to get her eyes further up the road and to make earlier decisions about what she can see, and you can work towards those goals throughout the lesson. But always remember that, always plan to change your plan. And as soon as deficiencies start to creep in on things lower down the list of, because anticipation planning is quite an advanced thing, but don't let anything go. And if other things start coming in, don't be afraid of ditching that and fixing these things that are happening. Don't just stick loyally with your plan. in favor of sticking with the plan and then not working on the other things. So keep your eye on the other things, because if the other things aren't right, the examiner's thinking, well, why are we working on this when they can't do these things, these simple things? So, you know, be ready to change your plan and react to what's happening in the here and now.
Yeah, great, thank you.
Amazing. I'm just quickly going through to see which is next, because you've answered a couple, so we'll leave them. So Mark just said, if we start verbal commentary driving from the start and such it becomes a habit, can they continue to use it in the L test? Of course they can. Learners can do what they like in their test. They can have music on, as long as they can hear sat-nav and hear the examiner's instructions. They can have music on. They can sing Disney songs all the way around if that's what they need to feel calm. Brilliant. So we've got to 8 o'clock. I know you've answered a few in there, Lisa. We'll not get to them. Just remind everyone where people can find you.
Yeah, I'm quite prominent on Facebook, so you can probably find me on there. Like I said, I've put my websites in the links as well. So adidoctor.co.uk and pdidoctor.co.uk. All the courses that I run are in there. But yeah, just start with a chat, really. So if you want help or need help, or you want to better yourself, then let's just have a chat and find out where you're up to and what you feel you need to improve on, and then we can go from there.
Amazing. And yeah, as I mentioned earlier, Empathetic Instructor Training on Facebook or beckyseaton.co.uk to book a one-to-one or any of my workshops on pdiadi.com. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. Remember, next week we've got Diane Hull joining me, which is going to be a great session. You guys are going to learn how Diane Hull actually helped me pass my part 3 and a lot of other stuff, and how she can help you guys too. So thank you so much. This will be up on YouTube within the next couple of hours, hopefully, and have a great, what day are we? Wednesday. Thank you, everyone.